Good afternoon. I think we are live. This is Wade Hansen with Cabrillo Advisors, and I'm joined by Michael Zeisser, FMZ Ventures. One thing we wanted to ask is if you don't mind turning off your video, that'll make it easier somehow for us to manage the screen and do the recording. We will have time at the second half of the hour to ask questions. So we'll kind of open up the mic for that. And also we have a couple of questions that people have already sent in. So again, good afternoon. Appreciate everybody joining us. Just a quick introduction. I'm Wade Hansen. I think most of you know me since we sent this out through our contact list, but was with McKinsey for 5 years, a couple of years at Dell Ventures, and have been doing Cabrillo Advisors now for a little over 20 years. High-tech investing, high-tech investment banking, and doing over the last 10 years a pretty significant business in valuations for private equity and venture-backed companies. I am joined by a friend and former McKinsey colleague, Michael Zeisser. Michael was with the firm for 12 years, leading the digital media practice. Left and had a substantial run with a business called Liberty Media, which included QVC, ProFlowers, TripAdvisors, and the rest of the John Malone collection. From there, supported Jack Ma's investments in the US as the US chairman, and was involved in companies such as Lyft, Shutterfly, and Lending Club. And in 2020, picked a great year to start this business. Launched his Fund I, which is now fully deployed, working on now currently Fund II, where they've raised over $100 million in what we all know to be a challenging market, and has a fascinating perspectives on how the future of investing and some of the most interesting opportunities coming up in the next few years will be found in what he will call the experience economy. So I will not steal any thunder at all. Let me please introduce Michael, and Michael's going to walk us through a brief presentation and then open it up to questions. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you very much. Welcome, everyone. I'm really delighted to have a chance to talk about something that I have become very passionate about. And I want to thank you, Wade and Natalia, for helping to stage this experience. We have roughly an hour, and we thought that it would be best used if I spend maybe 25 minutes or so to the top of the hour to talk about the thesis on experiences, and then we just open it up to general Q&A. So with that said, Natalia, if you could switch to slide 1, please. I want to begin by introducing myself more deeply. As Wade said, we share the experience of McKinsey and Company. I was in the New York office for 12 years, was a partner in the New York office. I did run McKinsey's first internet practice back in the 90s. Of course, I was very lucky because New York is, of course, the media capital of the world, financial services capital of the world. And these are information-intensive industries that were affected first and certainly cared about first what this new thing that emerged in the 90s called the internet was all about. You'll remember early 90s were the days of Prodigy and CompuServe, and of course our first internet IPO was the 1995 Netscape IPO. So I have been very, very lucky to be associated with this industry literally since I was born. I did have an opportunity to learn investing from John Malone, of course, the chairman and founder of Liberty Media, as probably a few of you know. It's probably one of the largest and most interesting media holding companies in the industry. Now the owner of many experience economy companies like Formula One, Live Nation, Ticketmaster, and control shareholders of SiriusXM, Charter, TripAdvisor, a number of other businesses, including, as Wade mentioned, QVC and the Game Show Network, of which I was the chairman for a few years. I had the privilege really to spend 10 years with John Malone, and only left because I had become acquainted with the founder of Alibaba Group, Jack Ma, who asked me to basically be a face of the group in the Americas, and I joined Alibaba about a year and a half before the IPO in September of 14. Notable because it was the largest IPO in industrial history. We raised $25 billion. I was appointed to stand up a investment organization to acquire companies and make strategic investments in companies in the Western Hemisphere, largely the United States, the Americas, and Europe. We were early investors in, at the time it was called Snapchat and Snap, early investors in Lyft, 23andMe, Fanatics, and a number of others. I did spend 5 years at Alibaba. It was an extraordinary experience to be a member of the senior team of this company, and decided in 19 actually to strike out on my own and launch FMZ Ventures. FMZ Ventures is largely a solo VC fund. I am blessed to have an amazing partner who is ex-equity research analyst at Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, took a number of companies public, including Alibaba Group, how we met, and we've been working together for a number of years. FMZ Ventures, a very thesis-driven vertical fund. I believe I am the only investor who exclusively invests in what I call experience economy companies, which is what this is all about. And I'll describe in great detail what I actually mean and why I believe this is a very compelling new emerging sector. Before I go into that, I just want to establish my credentials a little bit more through some of the affiliations that you see on the right-hand side of the screen. Obviously, all of these institutions or companies are companies that I've been an advisor to, or am currently involved with, or I've been on the board of, and I picked them. There are others, but I picked them because I assume they're known to most everyone on this webinar. And obviously, a notable thread is that these are all companies that sell experiences or stage or distribute experiences and not things. So I want to just start with a broad statement, Natalia, page 2, please, which is that we are living, I think, through a very rare moment in time. I think there are few times when change, meaningful change, is really happening. And I think we've been in a period of real change. This is not this year. This is not even COVID. I think this has been going out for maybe a little over 10 years. It's largely driven by generational changes in values, particularly Gen Z. But broadly speaking, the mega trend that is occurring, I think, in front of our eyes is consumer want experiences over things. I believe this is not a controversial statement. I think it's very clear from the data, and there is research published almost on a weekly basis, and has been published for years, that indeed spending patterns have shifted away from things and towards experiences. And I took note of this. I've been a consumer investor my entire career, and I know deeply that as consumers, we are all creatures of habits. And yet here, the data and my personal observation was telling me that habits had changed. They're not supposed to change. They really don't change very often, but they have. And where there is disruption, of course, there is opportunity. And to me, it was extremely interesting to understand better, why was this happening? What was really going on? Why did I see in the data, and why could everyone see in the data, this massive change in spending patterns and this shift of spending away from things to experiences? And this is what basically led me to ultimately create FMZ Ventures, to really position myself and the funds and my partners at the nexus of what I think is the biggest mega trend, frankly, in a generation. Next page, Natalia, please. The importance of demographics cannot be overstated. And I thought this would be an interesting illustration of the fact that we have a new generation. This is data for the US, but the same data would only be magnified if it was at the global level and included very, very large countries like India or China, of course. But basically, we have the emergence of a new generation, Gen Z, and the very important and notable point to keep in mind is that sometime in the next few years, Gen Z will be the largest demographic cohort in the US, as the chart demonstrates, but more broadly on the planet. Of course, Gen Z has embraced a number of values that are very different from prior generations. Values like inclusiveness, values like diversity, values like environmental and climate awareness. And part of what's happening here, it's just part, but it's a really important part, which is why I'm highlighting it, is that this is a generation that demands more from the companies that services it, demands more authenticity and demands different values than the ones that had been imbued in the more traditional or the more historical brands. And as a venture investor, of course, this gets me extremely excited to see such a disruption. Next slide. There's a big debate about whether this trend of shifting spending to experiences over things is a temporary trend, or a fad, or whether it's a structural trend. And my opinion, my analysis, my observation is that this is very much a structural trend. I actually profoundly believe that we are in the early innings of the emergence of an entire new economic sector. The sector, of course, is comprised of the companies that either stage experiences or distribute experiences or enable experiences. And I think it's entirely plausible in the context of our economic evolution over 200 years to believe that we are actually in the early innings of the emergence of a new sector. 200 years ago, we were all farmers, and I think we can generally all agree that sometime in the 19th century, we had a new economic sector emerge, which of course was the industrial economy. And similarly, I think most of us would agree that the 20th century saw the emergence of a service economy. And of course, at the end of the 20th century, we saw the emergence of a new economic sector, which is broadly called the information economy, which is basically where all of the internet companies reside. So I do think that it is in the history of our organic, natural economic progression that we see periodically these new sectors, these new experience economy, these new economic sectors emerge. And so I personally believe that not only is it entirely plausible that we are now in the early innings of the emergence of a new one, but I do believe very deeply that that's actually what's happening. On the next page, Natalia, if you please will, I'll share basically the insight that I had a few years ago, which compelled me to go all in on this idea. And of course, I have put my time, which is my most precious resource, my reputation, my personal capital, all in the fund and against this thesis. But basically, when I was trying to understand what is going on here, why am I seeing in the data a spending pattern shift to experiences away from things, what is driving this? And I went back to first principles, as of course we've been taught at McKinsey, and went back all the way to the Maslow hierarchy of needs. And the thing that really hit me is about 5 years ago was that the lower level needs in that pyramid, food, shelter, safety, what really struck me was, oh my God, those lower level needs are needs that we can meet with things. So we buy groceries for food, we buy apartments for shelter, and we buy fences or alarm systems or guns for safety. All of those are things. The higher level needs, as Maslow articulated, the highest is what he called self-actualization. That's basically the need that I have, that Wade has, that everyone on this call has, to feel like we're living our best life. Other high-level needs are love, belonging. What occurred to me is those are needs that we don't really fulfill with things. And the example I like to use is we all have this friend who is not feeling good about himself. And we all know that if that friend runs out and buys the red Porsche Cayenne or the most expensive Rolex watch, we all know that that friend is actually not going to feel better about himself for having acquired these things. No, instead, what that friend could do would be, for example, to take time and in travel, because paradoxically, part of why we travel is actually to find ourselves, or equally paradoxically, we go far away in many ways to find our place in the world. Travel, of course, not a thing, it's an experience. And similarly, that friend, the other thing he could consider doing is, of course, go to therapy. And again, therapy is not a thing. It's, of course, an experience. And this is the realization a few years ago that really hit home for me, which was, oh my God, these higher level human needs are actually ones that we meet through experiences. And maybe the right way to think about experiences is as solutions to these higher level human needs. And this just made a ton of sense to me, because if you accept this explanation, then it's totally understandable why in our Western societies we are seeing a spending pattern shift from things to experiences, simply because by and large, of course, this is not true for every single individual, but by and large, in the United States, in Canada, in Germany, in France, by and large, in our developed markets, our lower level needs are addressed, are fulfilled, and these needs are progressive. And so people, starting with younger generations, are tending to their higher level needs. And if you accept my predicate that experiences are solutions to the higher level needs, whereby things are solutions to the lower level needs, then it makes total sense. And at least it's a very plausible explanation for why we're seeing people buy or avail themselves of experiences over things more so than they've ever done in the past. So pushing the thinking a little bit further, next page, please. I personally now am conceptualizing experiences as falling into one of four categories. And I have, of course, organized my investing activities against this taxonomy. And I'll just briefly illustrate with companies that I have invested in through my first funds, how these four categories of experiences work. The first category of experiences is what I call kinetic experiences. And as you can see, what I include in that are all the atomic world, IRL, real world kinds of experiences that we can have. So the entire travel sector, of course, would fall into kinetic experiences, but also sports, festivals, and things of that nature. Two companies that I've invested in are Get Your Guide, which is the largest marketplace of tourism activities. It's a company that raised, even in this environment, earlier in 23, about $100 million at a valuation of just under $2 billion. Fever is valued in the same zone, and Fever is a marketplace as well. Probably half of the investments I make, or over half of the investments I make, are marketplace companies where I feel I have unique experience thanks to my association with Alibaba, which of course is the largest marketplace company on the planet. Fever is a company that stages or distributes urban experiences. So if you are a consumer and you're looking for something fun to do while you're in your town, in San Francisco, in Los Angeles, in New York, you're going to find it on Fever, on the Fever marketplace. If you're looking for something fun or interesting to do when you go visit Paris or Rome or Berlin, you're going to find it on Get Your Guide. That's how I believe this industry, this market of experiences has of physical, real world kinetic experiences has structured itself. The second big bucket of experiences are what I call psychotherapeutic experiences. So I am an investor in Headspace, which most people know. It's a company that started as a meditation company. Today, it is a mental wellness, mental therapy company in addition to meditation, and offers basically the entire range of mental wellness services that companies and consumers might need. I'm a investor in a number of next generation psychotherapy companies. I think everyone's very aware of the societal level crisis we have around loneliness. We have our very courageous Surgeon General who earlier in the summer basically declared that loneliness was the #1 health crisis we have in the United States. As all of you who have kids know directly, the infrastructure that we have to do pediatric mental wellness, behavioral health is highly, highly inadequate relative to the need. And so it's an obvious arena for technology to bring solution, make care more accessible, cheaper, instrument mental wellness in a way that frankly has never been done, and just reinvent this category. So this is a big part of what I invest in. I'd say categories 1 and 2 are probably the dominant companies that I have in the portfolio. The third category is virtual experiences. I'm going to assume everyone is familiar with Reddit. I think Reddit is a wonderful company. It stages about 7 million communities. The founder of Reddit, Steve Huffman, would describe Reddit as a community, a company that creates belonging. So if you are that 12-year-old kid who's very geeky and loves computers and gets bullied and roughed around in middle school and has no friends and struggles with finding friends in the real world, that kid is going to find a community on Reddit. And of course, Reddit, very known for the Wall Street community, but more importantly, at least in my mind, if you're a mom in Kansas and you just lost your 19-year-old to fentanyl and you're in the grieving process, you're going to find a community of other moms who are going through the same experience right now on Reddit. So I think it's actually a wonderful company that helps people not to feel alone. And then the last category of experiences, what I call functional experiences. I think of those as experiences that add functionality to people. Example here is I'll cite Future, which is a company that is the largest employer of professional fitness coaches in the United States. And it's a service that brings you personalized coaching by accredited, trained professional coaches on a subscription basis, as many workouts as you want per month, and tailored to your needs and fitness goals, and tailored to your locations and equipment. So the way I think about experiences is much, much broader than the conventional way. The conventional way, if there is such a thing anyway would be to constrain experiences to travel, bicycle tours, hotels maybe, and of course that's part of it. But as I've just illustrated, to me, that's only one category. That's the category of kinetic experiences. And there are many, many other categories where there's enormous consumer demands, psychotherapeutic experiences, functional experiences, and virtual experiences. So let me conclude. Next slide, please. Let me conclude by maybe just saying a quick word about the tactics of experiences. The headline that tends to grab people is experiences are not services. They're really different from services. There's a lot of specialization that goes into the design, the pricing, the positioning, the marketing, of course, the execution and the operationalizing of experiences, which is why I actually think there's sufficient differentiation that it's going to result in it becoming its own economic sector. I'd like to leave you with the fact that, in my opinion, experiences are a distinct economic offering, something that people pay for. One very important aspect is, I think, that they need to be designed to have an impact. The impact can range on a continuum from light impact to deep impact. At a minimum, experiences need to make memories. The basic purpose of any experience is to make a memory. Many experiences, the best, are designed to make history, family history. And of course, the ultimate impact of an experience is to engender a personal transformation. But this idea of designing experiences for impact is something that's fundamentally different from services. A corollary is the importance of artifacts. I also often talk a lot, I'm not the only one, but people talk about the idea of the memory dividend, that part of why we are having these experiences is because they essentially pay back over our lifetimes. We have them once, say, kinetically, we have perhaps this wonderful trip, or we have this wonderful festival or concert experience. But of course, the fact that we've had this kinetic experience once is what creates literally a memory dividend for the rest of our lives. We can remember the experience that we had, and designing the artifact and the dividend effect into the experience itself is a key principle that's also, I think, very different from services. And I will end on this part by highlighting how inherently personal experiences are. No two people have the same experience of the same concert or the same experience of the same guided tour of Paris. And personalization is another vector that is going to differentiating what's an experience from a service. And I think AI is only going to enhance and accelerate the ability to personalize these experiences. Recognition and how the experience makes us feel as people is another very important tactical aspect of designing experiences, and that then would lead us to branding and some other factors. Again, I'm just trying to give everyone a sense for, okay, this is different. I believe this is different enough to warrant its own expertise, but hopefully these examples give you a little sense for how experiences are different. And then on the next page, Natalia, I'll just conclude by highlighting the key points that hopefully you'll take away. I think experiences over things are a mega trend. It's definitely the biggest mega trend in consumer industries that I have encountered. I think there's only few times in history when things really change. I think this is one of those times. I think this is very optimistic. I think we are all super, super lucky to be active at this moment in time, because who doesn't want to live a very interesting life? I think the right way to conceptualize experiences is as solutions to higher level human needs, as I've offered. I am convinced that they are distinct economic offerings. People buy a ticket to go to Disneyland. People do not buy a ticket to go to the supermarket. And one of the key distinctions is that they are designed for impacts, which can be create memories, make history, or achieve transformations. As I've said, I believe this cumulative animal spirit and the cumulative entrepreneurial energy to fulfill this demand for experiences is creating a new sector, an experience economy, and it is my opinion that this is actually quite future-proof, because the ultimate differentiating factor of experiences are their humanity and the human touch. And I do think that a lot can be replaced with AI. Obviously, it's transformative technology, but I think ultimately a healthcare experience, a psychotherapeutic experience, or a truly meaningful personal experience in a group or a travel experience is still going to retain actually a human touch. And I'm excited because I genuinely believe the companies that will make history in this experience economy are being founded now and are being scaled right now. So sorry, I went a little bit over, but hopefully this was useful and at least interesting perspective.
Yeah, and I think that's great as a starting point. We've already received a handful of questions prior to the presentation, but we're going to open it up for questions in the live audience. Michael, I'll start it out with one question that I will second, and I'm sure everybody here that's been to a sporting event or a concert event would amplify. You know, the price of these tickets for a family of four, you know, have gotten, you know, absurd. Football games and concerts at SoFi can go $2,000 to $3,000 just for the tickets before you pay for parking and merchandise and the food. You know, is that a sustainable situation? Do you think that's you know, kind of surge pricing that we're seeing right now and it'll level out, or is that indicative of the fact that there's going to be tiers of experiences where only, you know, kind of the upper income can experience that type of an event live, and like Taylor Swift brought her concert to the movie theater, so that's where the normal people will find it, and the mega rich will go to SoFi and see her live?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of nuance maybe to answering the question, but not to lose the forest for the tree. Yeah, my opinion is yes. Yes, experiences. There's a lot of demand for experiences. I think it's a structural change. That's my whole point, is to say, no, this is not a fad. This is not like, oh, people are sad because they were cooped up inside their homes because of COVID, and now we're all whatever acting out or no. I do think this is not a fad. I do think there's a structural change. I do think for the reason I explained, our lower level needs are met. Now we're meeting our higher level needs, and we're meeting them through experiences. And that's why we're seeing the demand go to experiences. And I think the suppliers of experiences are seeing this too and are responding to it. I'd say then, of course, every category or subcategory has its nuance. And in sports is considered to be the most valuable content there is. Live content is what people tune in for. That is viewed as the most valuable content there is. And in the world of media, there's always been a reach premium. He who has the thing that the most people want to see and participate with, that has the most value, and that value is increasing. And the media rights for sports and sports content are only going up for their own reasons. But I don't see this tail off. And everyone, I think, on this call probably has traveled this summer. And so no one on this call has ever paid less for air travel or the prices we've all paid for hotels this year were truly insane. Yeah, could this tail off a little bit? Yes, the average daily rates, RevPAR metrics that have come down a little bit. The hotel companies that have reported results are seeing a little bit of softening, but is there a reversion to the mean, to what we had in 18, 19? I don't think so, not at all. So yeah, I think that's kind of my argument. That's my whole point, is to say something really big here has changed. And people want this stuff now more than they've ever wanted it before. And the things you observe, I think, are entirely consistent with that.
One additional question in a different direction. As an investor in the experience economy, what are the key performance indicators that you're looking for? What sort of used to be eyeballs, in the marketplaces and so on? What is it today on a consistent basis?
Well, I'm a mid-stage investor, so by the time I invest, all of our companies have revenues. The ones I mentioned on the chart have revenues literally in the hundreds of millions. And once you're at that stage, you can actually look at economic KPIs. And of course, the most important thing that any consumer investor needs to be obsessed about are what we call unit economics, and make sure that those hold waters, that effectively these consumer companies are able to acquire users at cost that is justified based on the gross margin and the contribution margin that consumer is going to generate over a reasonable period of time. So they're conventional metrics. What I pay, since I don't really know the audience, I didn't want to go too deep on the topic of branding, for example. But what I pay a lot of attention to is how these brands are positioning themselves, how they present themselves. I'll illustrate Airbnb. In my opinion, Airbnb is the iconic company today of the experience economy. And I think Brian Chesky is really the Steve Jobs of the experience economy. And I think for those people on the webinar here who live in the US, you can see the ads that Airbnb is offering on television, and you can see with your own eyes how these ads are dramatically different from the ads of Booking or Expedia or the other. It's obvious. You just use your ears and your eyes, and you can tell, okay, that's something deeper. I don't necessarily want to go into the theory of the case and the framework and how I look at it. I just want to highlight it's pretty obvious that experience economy companies are positioning themselves very differently from legacy, even travel companies. And that's a distinction and a differentiation that I'm highly sensitive to, because the younger generations, Gen Zs, are very sensitive to that distinction as well.
Mm-hmm. Natalia, can you give us some of the questions that have come in through the chat?
One moment, if you guys allow me a minute.
Yeah, take your time, Natalia. Thank you.
Actually, I have one for you that I'll fill the time. How are things in the virtual sector factoring into this? I'm starting to see more and more meta fashion shows, and I don't even know what this means exactly, but my virtual icon can buy luxury goods now, and the digital economy, digitizing a painting. How much of this stuff has anything to do with where you're headed, in the experience economy?
It has a lot to do, actually. I have to say, I think that's true of all investors. You have to be a little bit of a contrarian. And obviously, right now, we're definitely in a metaverse winter. The venture industry operates in hype cycles. We're pretty close to peak AI hype right now. But not too long ago, we had the metaverse hype cycle. And obviously, when that happened, was the worst time to invest in virtual reality.
You have a few minutes, Mark? In your office or somewhere else where we could just chat about this, about the property? Yeah. Let's just make it a quick powwow. Yeah. Come on in. Absolutely.
I think we have Blake, your phone line is open. Thank you.
Yeah. Reminder everybody to stay on mute, please.
Yeah. So as an investor, so the investor part in me is literally giddy, because right now we're definitely in a metaverse and augmented reality winter, and this is obviously the perfect time to reach out to companies. And in that arena, I think an area where I've spent a lot of time in virtual is emerging sector called digital therapeutics. So, it's one thing to make fun of the little people without the legs and Horizon and all of that, and who the hell knows whether that ever amount to anything. It probably will, but probably far out in the future. But I can tell you that there are wonderful experiences that are being commercialized now, where companies have created virtual reality experiences that have withstood or demonstrated in FDA level, CMS level trials, same level of rigor for the trials as for drugs and pills, but virtual reality experiences to treat people with PTSD, for example, or with chronic pain. If you're a person and you've worked for UPS or Federal Express for 25 years, basically your back and your knees are shot, and you really have bad pain, chronic pain, which frankly, up until pretty recently, has been treated pharmacologically with opioids. And we all know the negative consequences of that and what that did to people. And so the entire industry, medical industry, pain industry, has been looking for solutions, and thank God they exist, of doing a virtual reality. These are typically daily treatments for 8 weeks or 10 weeks or 12 weeks, where over time, the virtual experience is so all-encompassing that it literally takes over initially the cognitive processing of the brain, and then over time, that's why it needs to happen over a number of weeks, that literally rewires neural networks, and attenuates the feeling of pain. So they're wonderful solutions that are being created in virtual reality that are literally helping people with extraordinary ailments. So yeah, I spend a lot of time. I had no investment other than Reddit in virtual reality. And you can say Reddit's not really a virtual reality company, and I think that would be fine for the purpose of the presentation. I put Reddit in that category, but now I'm spending much more time. I'm looking actively, and I definitely have more virtual reality companies in Fund II than I had in Fund I. Another obvious example, of course, is virtual tourism. So you have very, very large groups of people, people who are too old to travel, or people who have disabilities and cannot travel. They want to see Rome. They want to see the Sistine Chapel. They want to get a tour of Paris. The only way to offer this is through virtual tourism, virtual experiences. And there's probably a dozen companies that are offering various solutions to this. So yeah, virtual reality, what Apple, I'll end with this, what Apple introduced a few months ago is an extraordinary device. It's an amazing feat of technology. It will take 10 years for this to be a mass market device and to be at the price point where everyone can use it and break it, and it's not the end of the world. The fact that these things will take time to get mass market penetration doesn't detract from the potential.
That's a good segue into the next question. Do you see companies that were successful in material needs being met, service companies or product companies, transcending to becoming winners in an experience economy? Or will it be a whole new set of players?
That's a really interesting question. This is the first time I'm asked this question, so I would need to think about it. This is very interesting. You could argue that a company like Disney might be the most prominent, I'm going to call it, legacy company or historical company. Clearly, Disney has the parks business. I think the senior people at Disney would talk about Disney as being in the storytelling business. I don't believe that they would use the word experiences in describing what Disney is and what it stands for. I would use experiences to describe Disney and what it is and what it stands for. You could certainly argue that Disney has a leg in the world of services or products, and another leg in the world of experiences. So off the cuff, that's the one company that comes to mind.
And then one other one that came in based on the wellness and feel good, etc. Where does the cannabis industry fit in this sort of a discussion? Is it off to the side just because it's controversial, or is there a place for it in an experience economy?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely has a place. Clearly, cannabis has a place, psychedelics have a place. Those are sectors that are on our radar screen that we are paying attention to. but we have not made investments yet. We have a very high bar in terms of just legal compliance and safety before we make an investment. And so in both of those sectors, as you know, Wade, there are still significant areas of uncertainty with regards certainly to regulatory framework and so forth. And you know, I'm a really I think pretty straightforward and common sense investor. If I don't need to take the risk, I'd rather invest in the companies that don't have these kinds of risks. That doesn't mean that I don't pay attention, and maybe for later in Fund 2 or Fund 3, but no, these sectors of treatments, mindfulness or assisted mindfulness are definitely part of what I think consumers are seeking. And in time, companies and brands will be created to offer these experiences.
One last thing, because I think it sort of transcends, you know, any economy, just to investing in general. Give us sort of your sort of 60-second view of, you know, when prices are going to rationalize with existing companies. I know that we had this discussion at the McKinsey retreat that you've kept your powder, you know, dry during the 2023 season, and really people haven't, you know, come to the table ready to deal with some of the pain for the overvaluations. I think it'd be an excellent way for you to just share some of the insights you have on that.
Yes, thank you. I'm actually quite negative. I am pretty pessimistic about 24. I'm not consensus on that. I may be wrong too. And as an investor, again, as a contrarian a little bit, this is very exciting to me. But it is my opinion that we probably have 10,000 private companies out there that raised capital when the sun was shining in 2021, and they raised for 18 to 24 months horizon. And of course, in 22, the received wisdom was, let's cut costs, let's buy runway. The way, of course, as a money-losing a company, you buy yourself time is by reducing your expenses. So companies, there are thousands of companies that bought themselves an extra 2 quarters, 3 quarters, I don't know. But you know, the initial horizon in 21 of a year and a half to 2 years, plus the additional 2, 3, 4 quarters that people bought themselves through cost reductions, that gives you 2 to 2.5 years or so of runway. And if you start second half of 21 and you add 2 to 2.5 years, you basically get to now and you get to 24. So yeah, I think thousands of companies are running out of cash. I think a very large percentage of these companies are unfundable because they have not demonstrated compelling product market fit. And I think their path to profitability is too speculative and, you know, too bad. And I think there are a very, very large number of high quality companies that are just going to, that have demonstrable product market fit and that have a credible path to profitability that can show that they're getting closer. And I think they're just going to take a very significant haircut. And why do I think that? Again, just being very commonsensical, everyone knows that Stripe took an almost 50% haircut in March when they raised their $5 billion at a little over a $50 billion valuation relative to their little over $90 billion valuation in 21. So Stripe and SpaceX, I think, are considered the 2 best companies in the industry. And so if one of the 2 best companies in the industry takes a 50% haircut, then I just ask, what do the companies that are not considered the best company in the industry take as a haircut? And may not be 50%, but I think it's going to be material. And that's just the resizing of valuations in private market. But I think to investors, it should be very attractive, very interesting. I mean, the best returns in funds, as per research, were generated in funds that deployed in 01, 02, and 09, 10. So I actually think now
it's a buyer's market.
I think it's a buyer's market. These things are never as straightforward as I portray, and they're never as obvious. But if you look at history, and there's a lot to learn from history, I think this is probably the most attractive entry point into the asset class in 15 years. Yeah, because I think we're at the bottom of the cycle.
Michael, I thank you so much for spending an hour with us, sharing what I think are provocative and insightful thoughts. And I just want to make it available to anybody here that wanted to share it. We're going to be cleaning it up and making the link to the recording available. Also, Michael will be wrapping up his Fund II financings. So for people that are interested in having a deeper discussion outside of this more of a thought piece, you can reach out to me and I'll get you in contact with Michael and his partner directly for that type of a discussion. So again, thank you so much for sharing the time with us, Michael, and everybody that's in the audience. And appreciate it. And Natalia, you can go ahead and shut us down. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.